Well, I just said I catch tarpon. As a matter of fact, we may even do it here today. I don't know what the time schedule does, but I've always got somebody in the crowd, so thanks for volunteering, at demo days that say, well, yeah, but you ain't fight no big fish in it. And what I do is I'll get somebody else to get in a kayak. I don't have a big rod with me, but I will take a tarpon rod and I'll hook up to the back handle of their kayak and I'll say take off, and I'll let them paddle out and get about 30, 40 feet out of line. I will set the hook so that I am sitting down when I set the hook. I will then stand up while I'm fighting the fish, and I'll stand on the rod. The beauty of the rod is it's got a pontoon style hull. It's almost like a catamaran, meaning that all the volume is out away from the center line. So all your volume is out here, away from the center line. So you almost have like a catamaran, and you have pontoon so that when you put your weight on one side, and the beauty of this tri-hull is, if I'm fighting a fish, and I want to go that way, okay, if I want to go that way and I lean that way, and then something happens, I'm going swimming. Well, with this pontoon style hull, I actually put my weight on this foot, which exposes this face to more water and causes the boat to turn that way. So I can actually put my weight on the opposite foot, and I can lean into the fish. One of the things that I do when I'm fighting tarpon, because I'll go to Florida and I'll sight cast to them with this, that's actually how I sold Jeff on this boat, is we were at a demo day, and I said, dude, you got to get a ride. He's like, man, that's a fat boy boat. And I'm like, well, I'm telling you, dude, when you stand up in it and fish, there's numerous advantages to it. He's like, name one. I'm like, you can cast further. Because I know how to sell stuff to Jeff, because Jeff's very analytical. And I go, you can cast further. He's like, cast further? I'm like, you're taller, it's longer to the lure hits the water, therefore it goes further. He's like, oh. And because we had already had a casting further conversation about a long spinning rod. So he gets out there and cautiously stands up and it's like, it does this little, thing. But then when he went fishing and actually tried it, it will catch you off guard how stable it is. In other words, you'll be doing something and you'll lose your balance, you'll go, whoa, and you'll go, wow, that's kind of stable. So when I do the demo days on the water, I'll put my foot on one side, and I'm 250, 242, something like that, and I'll stand on one side and the boat just sticks. So when I'm fighting tarpon, I'll actually turn the boat to where I'm broadside, and I'll put this foot up on the opposite side, and I'll just lean into it. I'll put the rod butt and my head. Now they're pulling me through the water. So it's actually better for the fish, because from a boat, you're fighting them against a reel. They're taking drag, you're reeling them in. They're taking drag, you're reeling them in. But with the kayak, you can tic-tac, so you can sit down, you can use your rudder, you can go broadside and let them pull you back to center, kick the rudder all the way out the other way, change angles. That's why we call really good fishermen anglers, because they change angles on the fish and wear the fish out, or they present the lure from different angles. And that's the thing about a kayak. It allows you to angle more than any other boat. You can skip under docks, and I love it. I was at the Bassmasters Classic last year, and I told this guy, yeah, I can skip under docks. I can skip under docks too, but can you stand up? And I'm like, yeah, I can stand up. So I told him, I said, man, we'll take this thing to the lake, and you can give me a rope and hook it to the back of your bass boat, and if you can pull me out of it, I'll give it to you. But if you can't, then you give me yours. He wouldn't take me up on the offer. But you can stand up, you can fish, you can turn around and grab your rods, whereas before, you could gingerly stand up, you could make a cast, you could hope the fish hit it and you set the hook, or you would only make cast right off the nose. Like I used to stand up my 140 because I wanted to be able to cast further. I wanted to be able to see the fish before I cast to it. What sucks about pulling up into a flat that holds big fish is you want to catch the biggest fish in there. So for bass fishing, I pull up into a hole and I'll sit there. That's when I break out coffee or my fishing journals and catch up on the notes that I need to write, and just wait and watch and see where, I call it the point of origin. In other words, you'll see a big fish take off after something, and it'll always circle back. And you'll see it take off in another direction. So if you sit there for 10 or 15 minutes, you'll see 3 or 4 of these points of origin. We'll pick the biggest hump. That's the biggest fish in there. It's probably the meanest fish in there, probably the most territorial and most aggressive. So if you go in there and sit there for 15, 20, 30 minutes, and it's an eternity, I promise you. When I first started doing it, I literally had to sit on my hands, because I'm a power fisherman by nature. Power fishermen's, spinner baits, buzz baits, top waters, fishing aggressive, go after the fish. I call it active fishing instead of passive fishing. And when I first got into the kayak, I was catching more fish than I ever caught. I became more of a power fisherman than I ever was before, because now I can be more successful at power fishing. I'm getting into places where they ain't seen a spinner bait, whereas other places the spinner bait had died off, or that bait had gone stale because they'd seen too much of it. So you're going in there throwing spinner baits, and every fish that sees it is mauling it. And that's cool when you first get started, but then you realize, man, I pull up into this hole and throw this frog like all the way to the back corner, and I make 2 twitches on it and something blows up on it, and what blows up on it is the aggressive little 2-pound buck bass in there, and now you got to fight him dancing his way all the way through the lily pads, and you see like 6 or 8 whoop, whoop, as you're fighting him back, like, oh, that was a big fish. Every now and then it's a carp, but most of the time it's big females that are in that solitary water. And the biggest misconception about big female bass is that they go deep after the spawn. Yeah, they do. They go out and they hang out and they recover. It feels better. It's like sitting in a shade tree after you've worked your ass off all day in the sun, but they come back shallow. I promise you, they come back shallow. The other thing is that anywhere there's an avian threat, like hawks or ospreys or eagles or anything like that, they're less likely to expose themselves than they are at night. So I'll do the exact same thing at night. But the big thing is go in there, get in places they haven't seen lures. They're uninhibited. You know, they're not as wary. They're still wary by nature, but they're not as wary. But watch those point of origins and take 15 or 20 minutes and just sit there. After you see the fish, then you can stand up and you can actually make a pinpoint presentation and catch the fish. And you know, if I sit there for an hour and only catch one fish, but I know it's the fish in that area, then you know that's what I'm out there for.
Let's talk about rain a little bit. Okay. I already talked about one thing. Well, on your site, I've written an article called "Got a New Toy." It's about all the different things that I go out and go to the hardware store or, you know, the boating store or whatever.
Home Depot, aisle 7.
Home Depot is most of it.
That's the PVC aisle, if you don't know. That's
yeah. Or Walmart for the cool noodle. The article, Got a New Toy, which is going to be on his website, kayakbassfishing.com soon, talks about the 5 or 6 things that right off the bat, as soon as I have a new kayak, I'm putting on there. And the first thing is the sand spoke. Now, he's got a real nice one. I go the cheap route. You see on the side of my red kayak there, it's an old rake handle. About 6 replacement rake handle, about $6. You may even have one that's busted in your garage. What that does is you can, like I said before, run it through the scupper hole. That's a parking brake for your kayak. This is a real nice one. You want to talk about that one?
But if I was Jeff, that's all I would fish too. But I fish a lot of oyster, a lot of rock, a lot of sand where there's oyster every 3 inches. So I use this one with this billet tip in it so that I can get it started and I can bust through the stuff. As a matter of fact, when I go fishing with Jeff, I can't use this one because that volcanic rock that's on the bottom of the rivers, that's actually a better alternative. So this pole, the guy that makes it's a real good friend of mine. His name's Captain Dick. He's got a website, captaindick.net. But this is really good for deeper marshes and flats. It's really good for saltwater. It's really good for there's sand bottom or mud bottom where there's shell or zebra mussel or something like that you got to bust through. But for your average everyday fishing, and I still have a golf club inside my kayak that's just a fiberglass or a graphite golf club that I cut the head off of, and it's got the rubberized handle on it. I drop that through the scupper, and just like Jeff said, I'll stick my foot against it and hold it in place, and it'll be sticking out about 2 inches under my kayak, and I'll be drifting along. If I see a fish, all I got to do is take my toe off of it. It drops down, locks me in place, and now I can sit there and make the presentation, and I get 2 or 3 presentations instead of the current pulling me up on the fish and blowing the hole. Or if I'm in a flat bass fish and the wind's blowing me, I don't have to make any noise to stop myself. I can just drop that thing, and I'm in there. I had one right here for a while going through this scupper that I tie a string on it and I hold it in my mouth, and it would be bent and the friction would hold it in place. And as I was drifting up on the hole, if I got on a fish, I have one of them bungee cords that has the ball on it for like a tarp. I'd put that in the corner of my mouth, and if I saw the fish, I'd just let it go, and then the fall thing would stick through, and now I'm facing the direction I need to. I can make the presentation. But I'm gonna tell you right now, I use whatever's there. I'm the biggest jerry rigger out there. We're fortunate in that we've got like some pro staff affiliations, and people who care about what we say now, so people like poke stuff in our face. But we actually get to seek out the stuff we really love and go out and endorse it, and that's great. But most of the stuff I started with was homemade. I'm an officer in the Navy.
Homemade?
Yeah, I'm an officer in the Navy now, but I was enlisted for almost 10 years and broke all the time, working 2 jobs, trying to go to college.